Hello, I'm back with my notes on House of Leaves, and this time I am working on chapter 2, going through chapter 2 here. So it starts on page 8, and let's just go. We're going to start off with the epigraph here, and it's from Frankenstein, but I'm going to read the full quote. Well, not the full quote, but expand on the quote, the snippet that was included. So the full quote is, "These were men to whose oh gosh, my mouth has trouble forming around certain words, and this is one of them. Okay, these were men to whose indefatigable, yeah, I'm saying that wrong, but I don't care, zeal, modern philosophers were indebted for most of the foundations of their knowledge. They had left to us as an easier task to give new names and arrange in connected classifications the facts which they had, in a great degree, had been the instruments of bringing to light. The labors of men of genius, however erroneously directed, scarcely ever fail to ultimately turning to the solid advantage of mankind." So I think like that idea, and the whole idea of that, like, people are building upon past knowledges, and especially in regards to this book, what Zampano has done and what Johnny has done, what the editors have done, and what to a degree readers have done, is built upon the Navidson record. Been trying to give new names and arrange in connected classifications the facts that we have been given, determining even if those are facts. Not to also mention that the book it's quoted from, Frankenstein, is about the creation of a man, or a monster, by another man. And so that can be applied on many levels in House of Leaves as we ponder who is actually real or who isn't real, in regards to characters, but then on another level, the creation of the monster in the hallway and how that reflects an internal aspect of humankind. So there's multiple levels there in regards to this epigraph. Okay. I also marked here, I'll just move my little, I thought the cat note was a little fitting for the cats in House of Leaves. I did also note here, we have the phrases such as the filmmaker's original intentions. It's impossible to disregard his primary goal, and that made me think about the death of the author, or the death of the filmmaker. Not what they had envisioned or intended, but what we can only judge what we have in front of us. So like, how do we know Navidson or Zampano's or Johnny's intentions? We only have the text that's in front of us to judge that. Over here, everyone has helped apply his or her own personal texture. You can see that in the text as well. Like, Zampano put his texture on Navidson, and then Truant, and then the editors, and then the readers as well. And then again, the death of the author here too, but too often his response has been misread by those aware of the film's ending. And it's interesting, if you know the ending of House of Leaves, we can come at it through multiple ways. If we look at the ending of the story of Navidson and his family, we can argue that this is a love story, right? Or we could go and look at the end of this story, right here, if I move my notes, which is this Yggdrasil concept, and I'll talk about more about that when I get there. As you can see, I have lots of notes and thoughts on that. So if we take this into consideration when reading the rest of the book, it might have some interesting things for us to say. Okay. I thought this was interesting. I already talked about Daisy having the pair of scissors and cutting herself, or not cutting herself. But then we also get here on page 12, Lude, in Johnny's text, Lude has a pair of scissors as well. Yeah, and then here we have, you might think you're smart picking up on this on your first read through, but I'll point something out after. The water heater's on the fritz, and then David, in Truant's part, he says there's no effing hot water. So his hot water's on the fritz. But then we have him admitting on page 16. Is it just coincident that this cold water predicament also appears in this chapter? Not at all. Zampano only wrote heater. The word water back here, I added to that. So we get Truant admitting to altering the Zampano text, which is very interesting because you have to wonder how much of that is actually him writing it then. That's like one of the first in-your-face clues about maybe Zampano isn't real. Right? Yeah. I thought this was also interesting, a phrase. She has no room for him. She doesn't have enough space in the house, in her body as a house for him. Kind of to play on that story, the idea that the hallway in the house is representative of the relationship between Navidson and Karen. Yeah. And I thought this was interesting too. Truant's talking about how his stories, the girls fall into the rhythm of the story, but you can't really fall into the rhythm of House of Leaves because it's constantly being disrupted by the different footnotes, by the different questionings that you're having, you know, by the different formats that things are in. Like, you know, we're not really into the strange formatting yet, or even into like the strange essays and stuff like that yet, but we're starting to get the disruptions with the footnotes and the commentary. Just another clue that things aren't real, as if maybe by touching me they could find out for sure if I was for real. Is Truant real? Who knows? Then we have this here, over 50 birds of paradise, and we get more references to birds of paradise here on the next page, page 16, but we also get a reference on page 257. Let's find that page here. In Tom's story, this is literally Tom's story, that it's kind of a joke, but he mentions birds of paradise. He's like, yeah, when I was in the Navy, I got drunk one night in Singapore and had sex with a bird of paradise. I was just wondering if you were my son. So the reference is here to birds of paradise, which is something very obvious and in your face as a reference. We then begin to question who is Johnny the son of. Yeah. Birds of Paradise. Then down here, a greater story still looming in the twilight, which for some reason I'm unable to see. Just a meta reference, I think. And it's not something you figure out immediately. So we got lots of references to storytelling and how Johnny is a storyteller at this part. So you begin to then question, is he telling a greater story outside of the, I believe his font is Courier, out of his Courier print here. And then over on page 16, we get that word that I talked about before, vituperative. Because Johnny used that word in the introduction. It means bitter and abusive. The word's right there. Yeah. Then we have the rabid speculation over Karen's infidelity seemed driven by principally sexist culture. And that's a lot of things that people point out, is how sexist this book can seem, especially towards Karen as the only female character. Oh, Pelafina, I guess, too. But like it's called out. Like, this guy is writing about something that is sexist. So take of that what you will. So and then I said here we got him admitting to the fact that he is pitting his own words there, and another reference to the birds of paradise. And then on page 17 we get this first reference to Delisle, and yeah, the phrases, and I didn't highlight it here. Sorry, but the phrase that I had written down on my notes is, no one had any idea who she was or why it was she haunted his thoughts and conversations like some albatross. No, that's this word right here. Sorry. No one. Okay, so Delisle is a reference to an actual real life photograph. I don't know if that girl had a name that we know of, but she was a picture of a girl starving to death, and there's a vulture in the background, just kind of the implication that the vulture is waiting for her to die so it can eat her. And it was photographed, and apparently that's what's causing Navidson's distress in regards to photography. But I also want to point out this reference to this albatross, and that's a reference to the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. So, and if you don't know the Rime of the Ancient Mariner, what happens is this man is out at sea. They're not having the greatest of times, and then he shoots an albatross, and that's really bad luck. So they make him wear the albatross around his neck, and his punishment is to go on and tell his tale for forever. That's a very basic, surface level understanding of the Rime of Ancient Mariner. So it's something that he has to wear around his neck to remind people that he caused the suffering. So that's a reference there. And then we have this down in the footnote. It was the article of a title called What's in a Name? So I decided to dive into the different names and what they could possibly mean. So Navidson is often called Navy, which is a shade of blue, and blue is very important to House of Leaves. I don't think we've come across... I'm not going to randomly stumble upon the word house here. But the word house is always in blue. Not navy, but navy is a shade of blue. And you can't, necessarily call someone blue without it being rubbed in your face. Is obvious like that, right? Delisle to me sounds like denial. Truant means running from your responsibilities, and we see that a lot with Johnny. Zampano, I already talked about, is from the film La Strada. Pelafina means thin strips in Spanish, and I extrapolated upon that to mean like the pages of a book, like thin strips, thin pages. And then we have the character Lewd, which sounds like lewd or crude, and he is a lewd character. That one's a little on the nose. Yeah, and I'm sure there's other characters, but their names to me didn't really have much depth to the meaning that I could think of. Okay. And then we're on this last page here, page 18, and we get the address sorry, this note is for over here. Don't want to confuse you. The address of the house on the corner of Succoth and Ash Tree Lane. And I'm going to talk more about ash trees and stuff, especially when we get to Yggdrasil in the back there. But I wanted to look up Succoth. I may be saying that wrong. I apologize. But it's also Sukkot, which is an ancient Jewish festival celebrating the autumn harvest and commemorating the passage through the wilderness. It means booth, from the temporary dwelling covered with plant materials or leaves. So I thought that was interesting. We get a lot of obvious religious symbology, but also some more subtle references to religion, especially the Old Testament here. And I thought it was interesting that commemorating the passage through the wilderness, commemorating your passage through the house, and the booth is a temporary dwelling. All houses, you could argue, are temporary. They're not going to last forever. But they are... This one is interesting that it's covered with leaves. So it is a house of leaves, if I may go so far as to say that. So let me know your thoughts on Chapter 2 of House of Leaves. And thank you for watching.